So let's get started. Web development is mainly concerned about work involved in developing a website for internet. And speaking about web development, we are actually speaking about two important concepts involved in web development, that are front end web development and back end web development. Let's understand these two topics with real life example that we face in day to day scenario. So imagine you are at a restaurant and you have ordered some food, let's say pizza. Usually, what happens is a waiter addresses you and you just give him the list of orders, or you ask him the food that you want him to be served. You want to be served by him. After a couple of minutes, he brings you the food. So, what front end web development actually is that you are able to see things around you and you are able to access only those things. That is mainly concerned about front end development. When it comes to back end development, the food that is being served to you, you are unaware of the cook and you are unaware of the ingredients the cook uses to cook the food. So all those things that happens behind the scene, you are not able to see those things, but they actually happen in true sense. That is mainly concerned with back end web development. And front end web development, that happens around you. You are able to see things, you are able to visualize what's happening around you, and you're able to receive the data. Receive the data in the sense you're able to have the food and get your requests fulfilled. So speaking in computer sense, the person who orders the food, that is you are the client, and the person who serves the food is known as server. What basically happens is that client makes any request to the server and server intents fulfills your request. In computer language, this is what happens in real world scenario. So to understand it in a much better way, let's move on to next slide. Here you can see basically 4 steps that are involved while you are searching anything on Google. Say for example, at the first site, you may not get all those things. So let's get into this step by step. So first phase, you open your favorite web browser, say Google Chrome, and then you want to search something about your own city. Say for example, we live in Mysuru, I want to search about Mysuru, and then you click enter. What actually you're doing is that you or the computer or the mobile phone you're using acts as the client, and it needs some requests to be fulfilled. The request may be in form of the search boxes, which you can see here. So the requests are then passed on to the server end. So you made a Google search for Mysuru, and the server gets your request. So what the server thinks is that, okay, the person is requesting for a place named Mysuru. Let me check out the resources I have related to Mysuru. And the pictures here are the databases, the APIs, and other servers. The data you need may not be available on one device, that may be stored elsewhere in multiple ways. So what Google does is that it fetches all the information that are related to Mysuru from various locations and gathers that to one single place, and then makes it available to you. So in third step, Google has gathered all the resources that Google could fetch from other locations, and it is piled up and it is ready to ready to flash in front of you. So in the next second, what happens is that you end up on a page where you get all the images, for example, images related to Mysuru, and other information related to Mysuru and stuff like that. So basically what happens is that you are able to see the first and fourth steps here. You search something on Google and then you hit enter, you get some resource. What you're able to see is the text or data which are in the form of plain text. uh, Basically they are made up of HTML and CSS thing. The backend things such as the servers, databases, and backend logic, you aren't able to see those things. You're only able to see the receive the data from those. So what I mean to say is that we first focus mainly on front end web development, and then as you go on creating web pages and you're ready to host your web pages on Google, we move on to the back end process. So not wasting much time, let's dive into front end web development.
Let's start with HTML. HTML is full form for an HTML is hypertext markup language, which is used to design the documents which are displayed on the web browser. As Danyata said, this will be part of front end development, and it can be accessed by technologies like C++ and JavaScript. And basically, HTML elements tells the browser how to display the text or information. We differentiate between the headings, links, paragraphs, and etc. Now let's see how a basic document, HTML document looks like and the elements used in it. When you open the any text editor or this is VS Code, this will be the front window you will get. For making a file, first you want to open a folder where you will store the file which you will be creating. I am taking this folder to save my files. You can choose any folder you want or make a new folder where you want to place the HTML files. Then the VS Code will open that folder. As you can see here, you will get the folder name. In this Explorer position, this will be the folder name. To create a new file, click on this icon, new file, and it asks for the file name. Give any name you want. And it should end with .html, which says that the file is HTML file. On clicking enter, the file will be opened here. And there is a small shortcut to get the basic things required. That is an exclamatory mark and enter. This is the basic thing required for the HTML file. The first line doc type HTML is must for every HTML file, which will be the starting line. Then comes the HTML starting and ending tag. Then head, which has the meta information of the files. And then comes the title, which will be displayed on the tab. And then the body of the document where you have the information. This is how you will use in VS Code. If you want to open this on your web browser, go to that folder where you have saved the file and select on the file. It will be opening on the default browser which you have selected. Here it is opened and you can see the file name here displayed. When title is something which is displayed on the tab name here. This is your document, so it is displaying here. Let's change it as HTML. And when I refresh the page, the name changes here. This is the basic structure of the HTML file. Let's start now. Basic elements in HTML. First is headings. You can see many headings in websites. Now I'll say how those are created. H1 tag. It varies from H1 to H6. And this is H1. Like that, you can have from H1 to H6. All are different sizes. H1 is the highest one and H6 is the lowest. For your reference, I will show all the tags, how they appear. Now I have taken all the headings here. By refreshing the page, you can see all the 6 lines. The first one is the largest font and the sixth one is the smallest font. These are called headings. Then we have paragraphs. As you can see in any language, maybe English, you have paragraphs which has more text. For that p tag is used, which have both starting and ending tags. Now I take some dummy text. For getting any dummy text, lorem is used, lorem, and number of words you want, letters or words you want. By clicking on it, you can see that some dummy text will appear. By refreshing this, the para will be appearing here. In this, there is one more. You can use many attributes. Attributes are those which gives more information how to display and what to display. There is one attribute called title, which is text which will appear when you place the cursor on the paragraph. Let's see, this is title, and refreshing the page and getting on the paragraph, you can see that the text will appear. See, you can see that this is title. This will appear when you have a title for any text. This is how a title works. Till now, anyone have doubts?
No.
Okay, then we can go further. Then you have seen many links in the website. Like when you click on some text, it goes to some other website. That is done by a tag. Inside that, there will be an href. This is asking for the source where you want to go. There are two types. You can give any outside URL, like any you want to give any URL which is from the website. Let's take one example for that. I'm taking a Wikipedia page, copying the link and pasting here. You should give a name which will be displayed on the document. For example, I'll give it like home. When I go to this and refresh, you can see a home. And you can see the change of the cursor also. By clicking on this, it goes to the next, where which link is given. Like I given a link of the Wikipedia. Or you can give any link which is in your folder itself. Any link can be given. Here I have some dummy file called crop.html. By giving this and refreshing the page and clicking on this, it goes to that page. Like this, you can give two types of links or any link you want. Maybe in your computer, any file, or outside the link, outside the maybe any net links. This is how links are done. Then you have divs. As you know, we make many divisions when we write for any exam or something to just differentiate between the text. Like that, if you want to style a particular page or particular list of things in special way, you can use div. Yeah, you will, that has two attributes like class and ID. You will get to know more about this in coming session. And then you have lists and images. Lists will be taught you by Arpita. Images also will be explained by her. I just say what are the attributes required. This is source attribute and this is the alternate text. For example, I'll give an source is something it's asking for the link which you want to display the image. I give some image name and an alternate text which will be displayed on behalf of the image if the image has any error. See, you can see that image is displayed, and if the image link is removed, then you can see the name world because that was the alternate text given. Then and another name for image is empty HTML elements because image doesn't have an ending tag like others have. Div has, a has, like that image doesn't have. In the same way, BR doesn't have. BR means break. If you want to leave some space and give any information, then we use break. If you give an enter and display, it won't make any difference because enter is not considered. For going to the next line, we will give BR. BR means breaking the line. You can see that there is a line gap between the image and the next line. This is HTML document. Like this, we have one more HR. HR is giving a horizontal line on the document. When I load it, you can see a line here. This is the line. This line can be brought by HR tag. Then we have, you can use many font related tags too. B is for bold. If I give B and font, it will bold. I is for italic, or you can use EM for italic. If I load this, you can see the first font is bold and the second two are in italic form. Then has all types of language have comments. Here also you can use comments which are won't be displayed. That is represented by an less than sign and double arrow and two hyphens. Inside this, whatever you give, it won't be displayed on the page. And then there's one more concept, like you can nest the elements, like you have nesting of for loops, or if in C program or C++ program, you can nest it here also. Like we can keep one tag inside the another. For example, if I want both bold and italic together, B will be giving bold and I will be giving italic. This line is both bold and italic. This is how nesting works. You can use it anywhere. Nesting is allowed here. One more thing, the HTML tags are not case sensitive. Like here, I have given the small p. If you give the bigger P, capital P also, the code works and it will be correct. And one more thing, you should never miss the ending tags. Here, ending tags will be automatically given, but sometimes if you miss the ending tag, the program works, but some code works, but sometimes it may go give you errors also. So never miss the ending tags. These are the basic elements used. There are some attributes which are used. I have told you some, like SRC or alt, class, IDs, title, and href. These are the attributes which give more information to you about the text. There is one more thing. Styling the text can be done anywhere. There are three types. One is internal styling, like if you want to style inside the information, like here inside h1 tag I can give style and give anything. If I give a background color, it appears. This is called internal styling. External styling is done inside a head. If I give style here, and give what you want to style, like I done H1 here, so I'll take it H4. You can see the background color changing. This is called embedded styling, like it is inside the HTML file itself. The another one is external styling, which is done by CSS. Naipunya will tell you more about it. How in CSS style is used, same way you can insert all the elements here also. You will get to know more about in coming class. Now I give it over to Arpita to continue.
Thank you, Narayani. So now we'll be moving on to lists, which is our next topic. All of us, the name list itself is pretty self-explanatory, right? We all use lists. We have grocery lists, we make attendance lists, we have marks lists. So we use lists everywhere. So what is the main purpose of a list? Anyone wants to take this up? What do you think? Why do we use lists? Okay, I'll take it up myself.
So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it's more organized, like
Yeah.
more understandable.
Exactly. Yes. So we make lists to organize our data, right? So that it's easier to know what points we have to cover and to know where everything is. So what a list is it's a collection of similar or related items. And we can write lists in HTML as well. There are three types of lists in HTML. They're ordered list, unordered list, and there's something called description lists. Okay, so we'll be starting with ordered lists. Now, what ordered means is the list is numbered, okay? Ordered means they are in a particular order, they're not haphazard. So for an ordered list, the tag we'll be using is OL, okay? Which seems pretty obvious, right? Ordered list, OL. And inside the ordered list tag, we'll be adding our elements, our list elements. So that will be LI, which stands for list element. And now let's take up a list. What kind of list? We'll take up a fruits list. So that will be apple. And let me add another element, which is orange. And let's add another element, which is mango. Right. So now I've made a list, an ordered list. So let's see what my output will look like. Right. So as you can see, it's an ordered list. So there are three entries in my list. That's apple, orange, and mango, and they're numbered. Now let's try the same with unordered list to see what the difference is. Okay, since OL is ordered list, it only makes sense for unordered list to be UL, right? So we have UL. Let me copy the same thing over here. Right, so this is our unordered list. So as you can see, there's no numbering over here. Okay, it can be in any order. So they're in the form of bullet points. Now, one more thing we can do with these points, with these bullet points and with lists is, so let's say I don't like numbering my ordered list this way. Instead of numbers, I want to use alphabets. Okay, so that can be done too. And to change that, we'll be using the type attribute. So what this type does is, see, over here you can see, once I type in type, you can also see the description of what it does, and it gives you what you can add inside the double quotation. So I want to, instead of numbers, I want to arrange it using alphabets. So if I use type capital A, it will change the ordering over here. So instead of 1, 2, 3, it becomes A, B, C. And since there are only 26 alphabets, and if all the alphabets are exhausted, what happens is the numbering continues as AA, AB, AC, and so on. Okay, and the other types are, we have Roman numerals as well. We can order it in Roman numerals, and this can be both uppercase and lowercase. So I can have lowercase alphabets, lowercase Roman numerals, and so on. Now, also for unordered lists, let's say I don't like solid lists, I want squares over here. Okay, so for that, there's another way of doing the same thing. One way is using type, but there's also something else. I can do it using the style attribute. So style, And after style, you can see over here, it gives you it gives you suggestions on what you can add, right? So I'll be using list style type. So first is none. So what do you think none does? None takes away all bullet points. So there won't be any bullet points, right? So there's no bullet points over here. Now let's say I want square. Okay. So if I have square, my bullet points change to square. Another option I have is circle, which are hollowed circles. We have discs, right? They're solid circles, and these are hollowed circles. Okay, so this is how you can change the bullet points or the numbering of your ordered and unordered lists. Now, I mentioned there are 3 types of lists. So one ordered, one unordered, and the last one is description lists. Okay, so what are description lists? Description lists. Okay, so any guesses on what description list tag will be? Since ordered is OL, unordered is UL, what will be description list?
DL.
DL, yes. So obvious. So we'll have DL. Sorry. Yeah. So description list, what it does is there won't be any numbering, but it helps you. The main use of description lists is so that for each item, I can add a small description. Okay, so let me just add these elements, but when it comes to description lists, I won't write them as list elements. Instead, I'll write it as DT, which stands for description tag. So our first description tag will be Apple itself. And for that, I want to provide some description. So that will be DD, which stands for description data. And for Apple, our description is a red fruit. And let's take another description tag, which is orange. And obviously an orange fruit. Yeah, and we have, let's take banana because mangoes are orange too. Oh, sorry, a yellow fruit. Okay, so see, this is how description lists look. So I have my item and the description is visible after a tab space. Okay. In case I don't want the description, that'll work well. That'll work as well. So I can just take away my description. So I have Apple, there's no description, and I have my next item, which is orange. Okay. And yeah, one more thing I came across by pure chance is over here for unordered lists. Let's say instead of circle, I make a typo and I just put circle. Okay, it automatically changes it into ordered lists. So that's just a piece of trivia for you guys. Yeah, so that's about lists. Are all of you clear with what how lists work?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, and also I wanted to tell you guys about white spaces. The thing about HTML, if you worked with it before, you'd have noticed that no matter how many spaces you put using the space bar, it only accepts one space, right? It deletes. So let's say you give 10 spaces, you get one space and the rest of the 9 spaces are ignored. Now, let's say I actually want to introduce spaces. So let's say for our first element, I want to introduce a space. Let's say 5 spaces. So I've introduced 5 spaces. So obviously I'll expect it to look like, look the way it is over here, right? But okay, no worries, I'll just do it again. So the thing about white spaces is if I just introduce white space using spacebar characters, HTML won't recognize that, okay? It just flat out ignores the white spaces. So in case I want to actually introduce white spaces, one way to do it is there's something called extended HTML character, which I'll be using. And for that, this is how it goes. It's and NBSP. And what this does, if I hover over it, you can see it's a character entity representing a space. Okay. So if I run this, I mean, if I, yeah, you can't see a single space. Let me just add a few more. Yeah, so now you can make out, it's very evident, right? If I add NBSP, a space character gets introduced. Now, apart from NBSP, there's also other extended HTML characters called ENSP, EMSP, and so on. which will let you add different white spaces of different sizes. Okay, so that's about white spaces. Is there any doubt till now? Anything you weren't able to catch or wasn't understood properly? Guys? Yeah. Yeah, so now we'll move on to the very interesting part of HTML and probably of so many other reading material. What do you think? What is the first thing which attracts people towards web pages? What is the thing which stands out, which makes it very attractive?
Color and design.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's images, right? Images and pictures. So the thing about images, what images do is they greatly improve the appearance of a web page. So without images, it'll be very bland, right? So now I learn how to add images. So let me delete all my lists, right? And oh, there's one more thing. I haven't added the title here because I wanted to show you guys what exactly title does. So let me just say hello. I'll just keep it as test. So when I add something in the title, that is the name which gets displayed on the tab over here. So that's what title does. Okay. So moving on to image, we have the image tag, which Narayani gave a small intro about. And as she said, it's an empty tag, which means there's no closing tag for this. It's just image, and it only accepts attributes. So we have source from where this is inside source is where we'll put the URL for our image, okay? So the thing about HTML is images are embedded onto the web page, okay? So when an image is used in HTML, it's not actually inserted into the page. What happens is this image tag acts as a container for the image. Okay, so it's basically, image is a container, and that is where your image is placed. But that's just a small piece of knowledge. So for our image, one way to add images is directly from another web page or another server. And that, let's say I'll just add an image from the internet. Okay, we'll take this. What I'll do is I'll copy the image address and I'll paste it over here. So this is my image. I've added it inside the body. Let's see. Right. So you can see the image is included in my page, right? Now, what I feel is this image is too big. I want to reduce the size of the image. Now, that can be done by using the style attribute again. So for that, we have the style attribute, and I have something called width, which I'll set to 100 pixels. And I have something called height, which I'll also set to 100 pixels. So now this should have reduced the size of my image. As you can see, it's 100 pixels, 100 pixels, 100 by 100 over here. So this is how I change the size. Also, another way to add images onto my web page is by downloading them. Okay, you don't always have to take it from the internet. Usually the thing about internet is there'll be copyright issues and stuff like that. Okay, you just can't take stuff off and put it in. So let's say you want to upload a downloaded image or some image of your own. So that can, from your local system. So that can be done by, let's say I download an image. Let me download one image. Let me know if I'm going too fast so that you guys can work along with me. Let me save this image. I'll save it in my HTML folder. Yeah, I'll save it as image 1. Okay. Yeah, so this is my image 1. And I want to add this image 1. So one way to add the image without from my local folder is image source, and I'll call image1.jpg. That is the name of my file. So that should add this image as well. So yeah, as you can see, that has been added as well. It doesn't look very attractive and popping, but we can always style that later on using CSS. This is just to show you that images can be added. Okay. Oh, and one more thing. Now let's say I don't store my image. My image was saved in HTML, right? So let's say I take it away from there and I'll put it in some other folder. I'll put it in downloads. Okay? Now let's see what happens. Yeah. So as you can see, the image is gone, right? The reason for that is when you're using an image from your system, you should upload all your images and all the images that have to be uploaded into your HTML file. All of them should be in the same folder. Okay, don't put it in different folders. And as you can see, even though the image hasn't been uploaded, there's something to indicate that an image was supposed to be there. Okay, there's a broken image link over here, right? So how do I fix that? So in case this is not visible and I want people to know what was actually there, I'll use something called alternative text or alt. So I want people to know that there was a flower over there. A flower was supposed to be there. So as you can see, it shows it's the alternative text. If the image doesn't load, this text gets displayed. Okay, so that's about alt. And one more thing is, another way to style your image is instead of putting style over here, you can always directly put width is equal to 100. And let's say height is equal to 100. Okay. Sorry, I have to move the image back. Yeah, let me just undo that. Yeah, so as you can see, it's been changed again. This also got resized. The merit of using style over this is, since this is called inline styling. This, you know how we have precedence, right? We have precedence for mathematical operations and such. In a similar way, this also has precedence in a way that inline styling has greater precedence than external styling. So if you write the style thing in another CSS, using another CSS page, this will always overwrite that. If you provide two different styles for the same element, the one which is inside, which is inline, will always get greater precedence. So this is what will get applied. Okay, so it doesn't allow the style to get overwritten. And not just images, there's a lot. You can also add GIFs. Okay, you can add videos and all of that. Oh, and one more important thing is you can turn an image into a link. Okay, so let's say I want to turn this image into a link. I want this image to, this is called the anchor tag, right? So I'll place my image inside my anchor tag. And now I want my image, when I click on my image, I want it to take me to, let's say, google.com. Okay. So as you can see, look at the difference. When I place my cursor on top of the image, which I have not provided any link to, the cursor is a pointed arrow. But when I place it on the flower or whatever this thing is, the cursor changes to a hand, right? So when I click on it, it will take me to Google, to the Google page. Now there's ways to make sure that when you click on it, it opens in a new tab. I want Google to open in a new tab, but again, that's called iframes, which you can which comes up in CSS and which is a little advanced. So we'll lay off that for now. So this is about images. Let's see. Oh, and there's something called background images, of course, so if I have some text, let's say I have a paragraph and I'll say hello world. No, let me make it a heading so that it's big. And I want to add a background image for this. So this can be done for the whole body, for the whole page. If I want to add a background image, it can be done by using something called, again, I'll be using style is equal to background image. So here, this is background image, and I can specify. So I'll be having my URL. This is URL, and I have something called schoolact.png. So this is the name of my image. Yeah. So over here, since I've applied it to the body part, this acts as a background for that. okay, to the body part of my a page, the background is added. Of course, you can change the opacity and all of that, which again you learn in HTML. So they suggest the basics on what you can do with images. So any doubts with images? Okay, guys, you'll have to answer because otherwise I'll get
No,
confused.
Advita.
Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Right. So next we'll move on to something called forms. Yeah. Now, what are forms? The most important thing when you order something online or when you're filling out information, when whether you use Amazon or or, again, we've given you an assignment which is in terms of which you'll have to upload using forms. So it has a huge functionality, right? It's become very prevalent these days using forms. So forms can be created using HTML as well. So forms are used to collect user information, right? So again, very simple. Forms fall under the form tag. Yeah. So I have my form tag. Now, in a form, there's different types of input, right? It's not always text inputs. I can have text, I can have numbers, I can have dates, I can have passwords. So for all of that, I have the input tag. Now, my input tag, I have an attribute called type. Okay. Now let's say my type is text. Okay, my type is text, and the name of my field should be name. Let's call it name. Name is name, and let me make this small. And this will be name. Okay, this should take the name. So I'll just show you. Okay, let me put this before the input so it makes more sense. So as you can see, I've created a text box over here. So it'll accept text, right? I can obviously add numbers, but this is intended for text. But let's say I want to add number now. Okay, so I'll add number. Let me paste this. Instead of text, I have number. All this number as well, right? So now see the difference between text and number. Over on number, we have these toggle buttons as well, right? So this will allow you to increase and decrease the value, or you can always type it in. That's also accepted. So this is how you add numbers. The thing about numbers or quantity is you can also specify the maximum and minimum value you want to accept. Okay, and that is done using max and min. So I have max. Let's say I have, let me start with min. Min is 1, and let's say max is 4. Right? So what this does is it doesn't accept anything below 1 because the minimum number it has to accept is 1, and it won't accept anything above 4 because the maximum number it should accept is 4. Okay, so this is about, I'll use a break tag here and here as well, right? So we've created a form using having name and number. Next we'll use what will our next type be? Date of birth. Okay, so date of birth, and I have my input type. Okay, it auto-filled. So I have date, name is date, and let's see what that will give me. It gives me a calendar, a date filled, a placeholder filled date bar. So I can always fill in whichever date I want. So this is for date. Then another type we have is password. So the most important thing about password is security, right? You don't want other people peeking into what type of password, what your password is. So even if they're seeing, you want the characters to be either the circle, the standard circle, or the asterisk, right? So that's what this does. So let me type in something. It changes. It changes my character into the hollow disk or asterisk. Okay. And so also it depends on the browser whether it's a hollow disk or asterisk. So that's about password. And then we have something called radio buttons. Okay. So let's say I have food. I have pizza. I have pizza. Okay. So So I have before pizza, my type should be input. Let me just cancel this for now. Input type is equal to radio. Name, I'll call it food. And my food is what? Pizza. Okay. And let me just add, sorry, let me just add two more food items. Pizza, and let's make this tacos. And let's make it salad. Let's get a little healthy as well. So as you can see, these are radio buttons, okay? So when I click on a radio button, it gets selected. But I can't select another button if I've already selected one. One way to override this is if the name, it depends on the name. So since all of them have the same name food, you can only select one of the type, okay? Since they have the same group name, only one button can be checked at a time. But if there is assigned different group names, multiple radio buttons can be checked at once. So instead of food, I'll call this food, F-U-D, food. Okay, so I have pizza, but I can also select tacos now because they have different names. Okay, so that's how radio buttons work. And there's also something called checkboxes. Type, input type, checkboxes. Type, let me change this to check. We all know what checkboxes are, right? So that's pretty obvious what we'll get over here. I'll call this hello. Checkbox. Right. So I get a checkbox. You can select as many checkboxes as you want. It doesn't have the one selection per limit as radio buttons do. Right. So, and you also have something called color. I have something called color, which will allow me to choose. Here you go. So this is about color. You can choose whatever color you want. Yeah, so these are the basic things about images, lists, forms, and white spaces I wanted to tell you guys about. Any doubts in these topics?
No.
Yeah. Cool then. Okay, we'll move on to CSS. We'll move on to how we can design our pages, make them more attractive. So over to Naipunya for that.
Thank you, Arpita. So we did had something like, it was all quite default method. So they did use something known as style, so which I will be covering up. So you had some restrictions with respect to the design part, right? So you were able to write the code, the basic structures by using HTML. So that I would say it is just the half story. The other half story can be made more interesting by using CSS. So CSS stands for cascading style sheets. So by using which, by using both HTML and CSS, you would be able to design a complete web page, and it would be quite meaningful, and yeah, I can say it as colorful and interesting. So let's get on to it. So I will be covering these many basic topics. So let's get started without any ado. So the first thing to get to know is what exactly is CSS and what is its syntax, right? So the syntax has two parts, basically. One is known as the selector and the declaration. So within declaration, again, you have two values, that is property and its corresponding value. So selectors can be of many types. In this session, we'll be using simple selectors, and you will just get to know once you start coding with it. So there are many ways of linking CSS to HTML. So you just saw like Arpita and Narayani taught you about internal CSS. So I will be using external CSS, and it's a good practice to use external CSS, right? Because you may not get your code jumbled up, and you can just if there is any error, or if you want changes in the future, so you can just concentrate on the CSS file. So this can be linked by using the link attribute. So internal CSS, it could be written within the HTML file by using the attribute style. And there is something known as inline CSS, where you will declare whatever colors or changes that you want within the style attribute itself. So let's get started. So I have created a HTML file. So how to link this is you have to use the attribute link, and you have to mention the relationship between the HTML and CSS. So it is a default word known as style sheet. And you have to give the reference. So I have created style dots, and that extension should be .css for creating it. This is how you externally link the CSS file into the HTML. So now getting into style, I mean the CSS part. So let's enter some text so that we can apply CSS to it. So I will be just writing a basic line. So this is written within the paragraph tag. So while you code it within CSS, you need to mention the tag which you within which you have entered your contents. So let's start it with something that's basic. So I just want to change the color of this. So the color, the code, I mean the keyword that you use to change it is text color, or you can just use it as color. So once you enter this, just save it, and then you can run it out. So when you run it, you will get the output. By default, the color would have been black, so, but I have given the color as blue, and you will get it out. Until here, any doubts? And were you able to get the output?
Yeah, we could get that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So moving on, the first basic thing that the sorry the first basic thing that you will come across is something known as padding. So when you write contents, it's quite essential to provide space around these contents, right? So in order to provide that, there is an attribute known as padding. So padding can be done in two ways. One, you specify each and every side wherever you want, I mean how much ever space that you want to mention that, and it follows a cyclical order like top, right, bottom, left. Combining all this four, you can mention it in one go. That is by using the shorthand operator known as padding. So in that, you have to keep in mind that the values that you provide will be applied like starting from top, and it will be a cyclical order, that is top, right, bottom, and left. So if you apply this, you will be having spaces around it. So let's get going. So within the CSS file, you can just start it with padding. So then save it and you can just run it. So if you see, previously the text was somewhere here, but now with the application of padding, there has been spaces created as I did mention it. So I hope that you all got the output.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the first innermost, I could call it as an innermost layer. So after padding comes is borders. So by using the border property, you can I mean, you can use borders in order, and you can specify the style, width, and color for these borders. You can mention it all the three differently, or again, you have a shorthand representation that is known as borders. So there are many types of border styles that you will get, as I have mentioned in the PPT. So let's get started. So the first thing that you have to mention is the border width. So, and then the border style, I will be using the solid one. You do have many other things like dashed and all. And then the third one will be the color. So as you run, you will be able to see a border around it. By default, the width of the border will be entire width of your screen or the web page. So you can just cut it short by using the attribute width and you can mention it. So this is about borders. So the next topic is that of margins. So margin is the outermost layer. If you can see that this is the typical CSS box model. So we did cover the first part, that is the content, and that's the innermost thing. So following which you have padding, then border, and the outermost is known as the margin. Margin is used to create spaces after the border. So that will be yeah, it comes outside the border and you will be able to see that space. So this also similar to borders, you can apply it to individual sites, or you can use the shorthand notation margin and you can mention all the four values, or you can just mention even a single value which by default will apply to all the four sides. And for margins, you have to define it within the body of the HTML. You may not be able to get the output if you define it for the paragraph tag. So as I have mentioned, I did give the margin as 70 pixels. So there is a space of 70 pixel on all the four sides. So this is how the margin looks like. So any doubts? Were you able to execute?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So these were the CSS box model. So then moving on, we did mention the colors at the start, right? The color attribute can be used for text or background or even for borders. So there are three ways in which you can define the colors. One is the normal way where you will just directly mention what the color is, or you can use something known as RGB values, which stands for red, green, and blue. So it tells us about what percentage of these three colors are there in any given color. So the if you take the two extremes, so if you give all the three as zeros, then it will be black. Whereas if you give the highest value, that is 255, then it will be white, and all your other colors will be like in between these. In general, CSS supports around 150 colors, so you can just make use of it. And the third way you can specify is RGBA. So here an extra uh, thing that has been added is A, that stands for which represents alpha value. So by using which you can set the opacity, means how transparent or translucent you want the images or your text to be. So you can make use of the alpha value and you can just set it. So an extra attribute would be added to that. So going on. So here, instead of this color, I will be just mentioning, I will be just showing you the RGBA. So you can use the tab button in order to move from one side to other. And in the alpha value, it takes the values between 0 to 1. So lower the value, that much transparent with it will be. And if you go up and as the value approaches 1, the opacity increases. That's actually, you are just unable to view it. But yeah, it is due to the opacity. I will just increase it. So this is how the RG, you can specify the color by using any of the three properties. So moving on. So the next topic that will be of background. So there are many attributes that you can associate with a background. So the basic one is the background color. So if you don't have any image, or if you just want to change the color from the default one, you can use the background color attribute. So you can mention the color by using any of the three methods that I mentioned earlier, or you can even attach a background image. So this can be done within CSS by using the keyword that is background image, and you have to mention the URL, so which can be directly extracted from the website, or if you have any downloaded images, even that also you can just attach it. So the third attribute is known as background attachment, so which tells you how do you want to treat your background image, like whether it has to be fixed or scroll or local. So scroll comes when you have a whole length of text and you want the image to be equally distributed. So when you use the scroll bar, you should be able to see that background image even when you scroll down, right? So at such cases you can use the scroll attribute. And there is something known as background repeat, so I will be just using this afterwards. And as usual, there is also a shorthand notation, so I will be using this up. So, and it takes the values in this same order, like color, image, repeat, attachment, and position. So first, let me insert an image, and to insert an image, just do it within the body part of the CSS. So you can just go to internet and copy the image address, and you are just fine to move ahead. And make sure that you give the URL within the double quotes. So after pasting it, let me just run it out. Yeah, did all like if you tried it out, you would have got an output similar to this, and you feel it like quite weird because I did apply URL only once and it's just a sort of repeated, right? So by default, the images are like repeated both horizontally and vertically, starting from the top left corner. So if you don't want this to happen, then you have to use the background repeat property. So I will go to that longer notation. So here only you can mention it as like background repeat as no repeat, or I will be just using the shorthand notation and just show it to you once. So I will be adding a color so that if I know that the image doesn't occupy the entire space of the web page, so let that color be displayed outside the image. So the first attribute is the color, then comes your URL. Just a minute. Yeah, the first attribute is the color, then comes the URL. So then the third property that you have to say is regarding the background repeat. So first I will just mention it as no repeat. So then comes is the background attachment, and I would prefer it to be as fixed. And the last property is that of the background position, where do you want to see that image, and I would choose it as center. So just save this. I will break this down. Yeah. Yeah, so this is how your output should look like. So since the image did not occupy the entire page, I had given the default background color to be as black. So that is what, and you are able to see that the image has not been repeated since I avoided it by using the background repeat as no repeat. So well, you might be quite curious to know why is that happening, or if I want to repeat the image in some particular manner, say like horizontally or vertically, you can surely do it. So instead of no repeat, you can just mention it as repeat x or repeat y. So repeat x repeats the image in a horizontal manner, whereas y does it in the vertical manner. So you will get something like this. So I hope that you are able to follow and execute it.
Yeah.
Okay. So then let's get moving. So this is about the background. So the next thing is that of text transformations. So by using this text transformation, you will be able to specify the text as three things. One, if you want it as completely uppercase or completely lowercase or capitalize. So uppercase and lowercase, you are just aware of it as the name suggests, whereas capitalize is the starting letter of each word will be capitalized. I mean, it will be in uppercase. So that can be done by using the keyword that is text transform. So this you can specify within the paragraph itself. So just noted that in the text only the letter T was capital. So when you execute this code, the first letter of all, I mean TIAP, all the four should be capital. So that is how you will get your output. So then the next property is you can even add shadows to this so that it looks quite amazing. So that can be done by using the keyword text shadow. So it takes 4 parameters. So shadow can be defined in 2D, like length into breadth you have, right? So similarly, horizontal and vertical width. So the thickness, what you want the shadow to be. And the third and the fourth are like optional. So which introduces the blur effect. So the third attribute, the third parameter tells you about the thickness of the blur effect that you want. And the fourth one, you can change the color of you can give the color to which you want the blur effect. So by default, it will be black. So you can change it out. So first thing and you can, yeah, obviously there is comment in each and every language. So the CSS comment is quite similar to what you do in C++. So it's just like this. So for time being, I've just removed the background and I will be using the shadow. So the shadow effect will be, there are actually two types of shadows. One is a text shadow and the other one is box shadow. So box shadow, I will be using it while we design the buttons. So going on. This is how it looks. Sorry that I've chosen the wrong colors. I will just change it up. This is how it looks like. So you will be able to see that shadow effect, or the shadow effect along with the blurriness. So everyone got this output?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next topic is display properties. So this one you will be even seeing it in the next what Shirish will be teaching. So there are many ways in which you can display your elements. So I have just taken some of the basic ones. So the first one is known as inline. As the word suggests, so whatever elements you have, it will be like displayed in a single line itself. So with minimal spaces between each element. Block is something where and every element, so whenever you just pass on the different elements, it will occupy the entire width. So it will be like one below the other, so as you can see it in the image. Or you can even combine both of this, and that is known as inline block, where the element will be like displayed in a line, but the spacing between them will be not as narrow as it was when you just executed in line. So let's code this so that we can have a better understanding. So for this, I will be changing the code, and I will be using the class attribute. I've just taken random uh, programming languages names. So in order to apply this, since I have kept it all under the paragraph tag, so you can directly apply it. So you will be using the selector, like it should be mentioned as the tag's name dot the name of the class, that is I have given it as A. So I want to apply the display property to all of them, so you can mention it in a line. So, and I will be even defining borders so that we can have a better understanding of how it exactly works. So as you can see, this is the inline arrangement where all the elements are quite close to each other. So, and they are displayed in a single line. So if you change this from inline to block, yeah, it will occupy the entire width by default, as you might have observed when we did even borders also. So if you give the inline block, it should the output should be something like a mixture of these two. So it looks quite similar to the inline one itself. But these are the I have just shown you the basic ones, so which you can use it. So this is these are the basic display properties. So moving on is the buttons. So if you had seen in HTML how the button was just quite, it was quite boring, right? So let's do something for those buttons so that it would be interesting. So you can define the button by using the keyword button itself. So, and you have to mention the class. So I will be keeping it as button itself. Just don't get confused. And in between, you can mention the word that you want to see when you create a button. So I will be just using it as click on. So I have not applied any CSS for this yet. So let's see how the output will be. So it will be a basic one. So this is how you will get if you just use HTML. So let's make it quite interesting by using CSS. So the first thing that comes to our mind when we think of a button is the colors and the shape and the width and all, right? So let's define it. So in order to define this, you have to mention the tag. Since I've kept both the tags name and the class name same, you can just use the button itself. So I will be changing the, if you take button, even it is an element, right? So within the button, you have to mention if you want the color of that to be changed as background color itself. So if you want the color of the text to be changed, it's just color. So I will change the background color as well as the text color. So, and let us define some borders for even this. Yeah, and one more thing that you can do with the borders is you can curve the border edges. So that is by using the keyword border radius. So, and you can mention to what extent you want it. So these are the basic things that I want it to have. So just save it and run it. So you will be able to see a button like this. So previously it was just like white button and nothing else. So here I've just added colors to this. So what comes to your mind when you think of buttons? Can anyone say? I mean, it's a vague answer. What exactly defines the property of a button?
Click.
Yes, that's exactly. So let's add the property of click to this. Before adding the property of click to this, I just want you to be aware of, we will be using something known as pseudo selectors. So that is which can be used to select, you will be able to apply some styles or properties in a selective manner. So for button, we will be using two pseudo selectors. So the first one will be known as hover. So hover basically tells us whenever you move the cursor onto the button, what exactly has to happen. You will be just writing it into this. This you can view it exactly like an if statement where you have some condition, right? So here the condition is hover. So I just want to change the color of the button. So whenever I just move on to it. So, and even you can define the type of cursor that you want. So this one, that is the triangle ended one, is the default cursor. I want it to look like somewhat like the hand one. So that is known as the pointer. So I will just change the cursor. So whenever you move your pointer, the default cursor onto the button, these two should apply. So just let's see that. So as soon as you move on, the color changes as well as the cursor style changes. It was default and then I have changed it to pointer. So were you guys able to get this output?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's great. So, but still, I didn't introduce the clicking part, right? So I just hovered. It was just hovering around. So there is one more pseudo selector that is known as the active. So whenever you go to the button and click it, so whatever code you write within this pseudo selector by using active, that will get executed. Yeah, and yeah, before covering that a clickable button, we will also introduce shadows so that it looks quite realistic. So, and as I mentioned, there are two types of shadows. That one was text shadow that we dealt earlier, and the second one is box shadow. So box shadow has this syntax, so where you have to mention the horizontal and vertical components, then the blur radius, and to what extent it has to spread, and the color. So let me do this first. So before going into active. So I've introduced this property within the hover itself. So you should be able to see a shadow also. So when you move your cursor upon it. So that's how it works. So then moving on to create a realistic button. So I don't need this hover anymore. So I will just comment it. So yeah, button active. So how I will be designing the button is first I will be like having a button and I will be using the correspond a sort of shadow for that button. So whenever I click on the button, I want it such that the button's height reduces and the shadow disappears. So for implementing this, I will be defining the box shadow within the button. So that means the shadow will be existing by default. So, and you can even define multiple shadows which can be separated by commas so that the shadows and the button, how you want it, looks quite realistic. So I do have done some pre-calculations and I will be just using those values. So this is one part of the box shadow and I want it to be multiple so that it looks quite interesting. So here I will be just changing the opacity. So this is the box shadow will be existing by default. So according to this code, so I will be even defining the active part. So here, the two extra things that you must be aware of is the position. So there is a attribute known as position. So I will be using it as relative. So what does this tell is, so whenever you press the button, so whatever actions that you want, like like when you click, I told that the buttons will sort of like go down and come up, right? So that's how you can visualize it. So it should be relative to the pre-existing one. That is like when it was not at all clicked. So that's why I'm using the attribute as position. So then I want that height to be decreased from the top by some amount. So that can be done by using the keyword top. So I will be giving it as say 20 pixels. You can give any value to that. And then I never want the box shadow to be visible again. So I will just make it as none. So you can just save this and execute. So you will be able to see a faint shadow, right? So whenever you go on, nothing happens since hover is not active. So, but when you click, like you were able to see that it sort of came down by 20 pixel. That's too much, I know. But in order to show you, I just gave that value. So it comes, it goes down for momentarily and then returns to its original position thanks to the relative position that has been declared. So were you able to execute the clickable buttons?
Yeah, I could.
Okay, that's great. So that comes to an end of my part. So the next part would be taught by Sharish. Over to you, Sharish.
Thank you, Naipunya. So this part of the workshop is the implementation part. So you will be applying everything that you've learned until now into creating something. Okay, something very interesting. So I want you to take a deep breath and recall everything you've learned so that we can begin and apply. Okay. Before we start, does anyone have any doubts or unresolved problems? Okay, great. We will be doing something very interesting. So I expect you to do it with me parallelly, right? So that we can have fun together. So what I want you to do is in an empty directory, create a single HTML file. Its name can be anything. Okay. I'm gonna create a file called index.html. So you can create in your, in your VS Code, you can create a single file called index.html and open it up in your VS Code. Just a second. Okay, and I hope the font is big enough. Can somebody tell me if it is visible?
Yeah.
Okay, is it visible, big enough?
Yep.
Okay, so what we will do is we will start by creating an HTML tag. Okay, and what we'll do is we'll have a head tag, and we will also have a title tag. And what will be the title? So now I'll tell you what we will be building. We will be building a form for admission into a college. So this will be student admission form. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my browser and I'm going to open this file there. So you can open up your file into your browser and it should be something like this. It should be completely blank with a title which says student admission form. Okay, is everybody able to follow? Guys?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And so we can have a body tag for our actual body. And for right now, we'll have a h1 tag for the header and we'll call it the same thing that our title is, student admission form. Okay, simple enough. And it should show up. I hope everybody is still following. Any doubts?
No.
Okay, and I think this is very basic HTML, so you won't have to scratch your head about what I will be doing. So you can just follow along. So let's have an input now. And the type will be text. And let's have a placeholder too. And the placeholder will be enter your name here. If you go back to your browser and reload, you should see a input that says enter your name here. Okay, so now the form is really incomplete because how will the person know what they are entering into this? Like we have a placeholder, that's fine, but it should be a little more descriptive. So what we will do is we'll add a label to this, and don't worry about the for property. The label will be name. Okay, so as you can see, now there's a name. Just to make it a little more beautiful, I'll add a colon here. Yeah, so I think this looks good. And now what I want you to do is, I want you to put all the fields that would be required for an admission in the chat box. Let me begin by saying that we will definitely need an input for USN. Is there any other field we will need?
Date of birth.
Sure. Anything else?
Branch name.
Okay, branch name. So I want you guys to actually put it in the chat box so that we can, look at it later. So that we can refer it as a list. Okay, so I'm gonna put USN, and somebody said branch name. Can you put it in the chat? Okay, great. Now, so what we will do is we'll actually wrap this around a form tag. So this is a native HTML tag, and we'll be wrapping this in a form tag. So it should look like something like this. Okay. And I think we will add a few more fields. So we'll have another label, say father's name, and we'll have another input, type is text, and placeholder will be enter your father's name here. Okay, the spelling is wrong. Okay, so we have two inputs. Now the thing is, this placement, I don't like it. They're placed horizontally. I want them to be placed vertically. So what I will do now is I will wrap them around an empty div tag. Okay, I'll do the same here too. Okay, so now you see they are placed one above the other, but somehow I feel they are overlapping. So let me just zoom in. Okay, so I feel they are very close to each other. So anybody have any idea how we can, separate them from what you've learned today? Anybody?
Break. Can we use break?
Yes, but there's a more efficient and a better way of doing this.
Padding.
Yes, good answer. So style is the way to go here. So what we will do is, actually I'll be covering one more thing called selector that was not covered in the previous parts. So selector is something that is used to select an element, right? So in this case, let's use class. Class is a type of selector that selects multiple things. In this case, let's say form element. So this is a name for the class. And in our head tag, we'll have a style tag. So basically, like you put your style in a different file, you can also put it inside your HTML, and that is done using a style tag. So we will be putting a style here. What we can do is, so in a CSS, okay, style is added to a class using a dot. So it's dot form element and curly braces open, and we'll do a not a padding, actually margin top 10 pixels and margin bottom 10 pixels. Okay, and this solves our issue. Okay, now what we will do is we need a button to actually submit the form, right? So I'm going to use the button tag and I'm going to say submit. Okay, so we have a submit button that right now does nothing but reloads the page. Okay, so this is a very common behavior. We'll see how to tackle this later. Okay, for right now, let's add a few more things. So we can add gender and we can add USN and branch name for now. So branch name is gonna be the same as the names that we have. So it's gonna be uh, it's gonna be USN. So it's gonna be input of type text, and the placeholder will be enter your USN here. Okay, and so we have a USN field now. Okay, I accept this looks very ugly, but yeah, we can add the style later. And for the gender, what we can do is we can have a radio. We'll have a div and we can have we can add a text called gender, and then we can add the radios. So we will need label male input type radio, and we need a value of male. Okay, let's check it out. Right, so we have a radio with a single button, so we'll need another for female. So this is okay, female, and the value is female. Right, so now we have so you see these both of these are getting selected, but we don't want that. So what we will do is we'll add a name property and we'll call it gender, and name property gender, and we'll have an ID for these two, and the ID should be male, and in the oh wait, this should be female, and in the for we should have male here, that is the ID of the input, and female here.
Excuse me, Srish.
Yes,
I think your screen is stuck.
oh, my screen is stuck.
Okay. Yeah, I think now it's
hold on, wait, let me represent. Okay, Ashish, can you confirm if my screen is visible now?
Yeah.
Okay,
go ahead.
So if you guys see here, now the radio is working as we wanted it to, but yeah, I think the label should be after the actual radio button. So I'm gonna put it one line below and save it again. And yes, I think this looks better. And also we should add another for gender of type other. Wait just a second. Other. Okay, is everybody following? Is everybody able to understand what I'm doing? Anybody have any doubts, or if somebody's wondering what I'm doing? Everybody clear?
Yes, Suresh.
Okay, great. Okay, I think I forgot something. Yeah, the name should be gender. So the thing is, if you want radio buttons to correspond to a certain value, then all of their name properties should be the same. So if I have, say, some other name property for this one, so if you see, male and female will work properly, but the other button will, behave differently. So let's get that back, and it is working. Now, for the most important part of this form, okay, I really want to know if you guys are doing this parallelly, because it's going to be more fun if you do it. Are you guys doing parallelly?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. So now is where the fun part comes in. So I'm going to put a URL in the, uh, okay, just give me 1 second. Okay, I'm really sorry. I'm back. So I'm gonna put a URL in the chat box. So what I want you to do is, in your form, okay, there's a property called action. Okay. So what is this action? So right now, if you notice, all the form does is it reloads and resets the form, right? So we need to get it to work. Somehow we need to make this form submit the data somewhere. That, because that is what web development is all about, implementing something on the web, right? So what I want you to do is, I want you to paste that URL in your action, okay? And I want you to put your name at the end. So basically the URL should be webdevelopmentessentials.herokuapp.com/your name. So you definitely need to remove the angle brackets, but yes, you should put your name here, or else this won't work. Let me mention that. Once you've done that, you need to add one more property called method. Okay. And the value to that should be post in capital. Okay. Is everybody following?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, one more thing that I want you guys to do is, in each of your inputs, there should be a mandatory property called name. Okay. So right now, only my radio buttons have a name property. I need to add to the other inputs as well. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to tell you why we need to do this in a minute. It's going to be name and author's name and USN. Okay. So once you added the name, the last thing that you need to do is add a type to your button, and that should be of type submit. Actually, this is not needed, but just to be specific about it, we'll add the type submit to the button. Once you've done this, your form should be actually working. Okay, so I'm gonna actually test it out. I'm gonna fill this out. Okay, so if you're looking at my screen, okay, it's still loading. 1 second. So do you see it says your response has been recorded? So basically, you will be sending the data to a backend that we created, and we will be storing that data. Now the question is, how do you see that data? So what you can do is, you can open up the link that I sent in the chat box, and you will be able to see the data. Okay, so I see Pradyot has already submitted his response. and you can see yours as well. So I'm gonna wait for 5 more minutes so that you guys can actually try this out. So if you have any doubts, I'm here to clear it out. If you run into errors, let me know. But I want you guys to try this out. This is something fun.
Yep. Can you go back to the code page,
Yeah,
the
definitely.
submit type part?
Yeah,
Thank you.
the type of the button should be submit. Okay. And I'm actually gonna scroll up to the actual form element so that you can see the URL. Does anybody have any doubts?
I got stuck in between when the screen was hanged, so I have recorded the code. I will do it in half an hour, next half an hour.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, this app will be live for, for the next week at least. So you can try it out anytime you want. One more thing. So the thing is, a lot of people will be trying out this. Okay. So this page might fill up and it may be hard to find your response. So what you can do is you can go back to your code, copy the exact URL you put in your form. Okay. And you can paste it in the browser and you can see only your responses. Okay, wait, this caused an error. Okay, this is working. So you can check your responses in the here. So I see Anusha has submitted.
Hey, like the form action and method part should be written in the form, like where we open the form, right?
Yeah, so in the form tag itself, there should be an action property that has the URL you're submitting your data to, and there should be a method. The
Yeah.
value of the method should be post in capital.
Yep.
Are you guys able to? Okay, this yeah, Arshita, there was an error, but I think it's back up. You can try it out now. And I guess there are a lot of responses now. Okay, wait. I'm getting the same error again.
Yes, still says error.
Just a second. Okay, it's working now.
Let me try out.
Yes, please do.
No.
Okay, I think there is an issue here. So what we can do is you can style this form, okay, and maybe you can try it out after a few hours. I'll fix it up. I think there's an issue. So yeah, so we have reached the end of this event, okay, and I hope everybody learned something about web development, okay, and I hope this helps you start up your career into web development, okay. So if you have any doubts, you can contact any of us, okay. So you, right, I forgot to mention. So we have something of a competition. I won't say competition, but it's, you get to build something on your own and submit, and we will review it. Okay. So after this, you will be mailed a Google form for submission. Okay. What is the criteria? The criteria is you can build anything you like, okay, from what you've learned, as long as it is creative and original, okay, and you need to zip it up into into a folder, okay, and you need to submit on the form link. Does it sound simple? Something you can do?
Yep.
So it can be anything. You can build a form or maybe a website and you can submit it. And the top two will get a shout out on Instagram. So please do, take some time, maybe tomorrow, and build something and submit it. And the last date to submit this will be tomorrow night. So you have about 1 day to do this. And we'll be announcing the winners on Monday. Okay. So I hope you guys enjoyed this event and learned something from this. And as always, if you have any doubts, you can let us know. Okay. Yeah. And Varun put up the link in the chat box if you need it. So you can use that link for submission. Thank you very much, guys. This was it for the event.